I was 9 years old the summer we found it. We had driven 40 minutes outside the city to one of those estate sales. My grandma loved those. I remember she would move so slowly through each of the cluttered rooms, just to find something that was maybe a couple dollars less than she could pay for it at Walmart. But it was still always nice to spend time with her. The book was in a cardboard box on a folding table in the garage, sandwiched between a Reader's Digest and a water-stained TV guide. It was a Where's Waldo book, or at least something that looked very much like one. The cover had that familiar red and white striped figure in the crowd, the round glasses, the walking stick. But the title was slightly different. Not Where's Waldo, but Where Has Waldo Gone? I thought it might have been some kind of spin-off series or maybe a promotional pre-release, because Waldo was still in it, and all the art was the same. My grandmother held it up and smiled at me. "You love these," she said. I did. I took it from her and flipped through the pages immediately. The illustrations were dense and dizzying, in the way all Waldo books are. Hundreds of tiny figures crammed onto each spread, every one of them doing something slightly absurd. I spotted Waldo on the second page I turned to, and felt that small electric satisfaction. Then my grandmother bought it for 50 cents. I never brought the book to my house. I'm not sure why, it just stayed at my grandma's, on the little shelf in the guest room where I slept when I visited. So I only really thought about it when I was there. Every few months I would arrive at her house with my overnight bag. I would sit on the bed in the guest room and open Where Has Waldo Gone? And lose an hour to it. The first visit I didn't notice anything strange. It was just a book. It wasn't until the second or third visit when something made me stop on one of the later pages. I had been scanning the crowd the way you do, looking for the striped shirt, but I kept getting snagged on one particular character near the bottom right of the page. A boy. Small, dark-haired, wearing a blue jacket that looked familiar in a way I couldn't place. I told myself it was nothing. There were hundreds of characters in the book. Some of them were bound to resemble real people by coincidence. I found Waldo and closed the book and went down for dinner. The next visit I turned to that page first. The boy in the blue jacket was still there, but he looked a little different, more detailed somehow. The last time he had been a small, indistinct figure. Now his face seemed like it had curves and a slight gap between the front teeth. Not in the middle, but on the right side. I pressed my finger on my teeth, noticing the same gap in mine. And now he kind of looked like me too. I told myself that I was just imagining it, that I just saw myself in the book the way people see elephants created from a cluster of clouds. It was nothing. But it definitely made me more aware. Visit by visit, page by page, I noticed that the boy with the blue jacket was in almost every spread. Always small and in a crowd, but always slightly more like me than before, like a photograph developing in slow motion across the months. After a few visits, the gap in his teeth was unmistakable, and I could even see a mole under his chin, like I have. At that point, I really started to suspect something strange was going on. The page that ended my willingness to continue looking at the book was near the back. It was an Aztec temple scene. It had the same crowded, almost playful style as everything else in the book. Hundreds of figures in elaborate feathered dress. A massive pyramid at the center. A sky thick with illustrated birds. A festival, you might say, if you looked quickly. If you didn't look at the altar. There was a boy up there. He was laid out on the stone, beside a priest, in a ceremonial costume, arms raised, obsidian blade catching the sunlight. The disturbing part was how everyone was smiling. Every single one of them, the priest, the crowd, all of them wearing the same wide, empty, illustrated grin without any actual warmth behind it. And the boy on the altar, the one about to be sacrificed, was smiling too. Lying there with his eyes open and that same blank, terrible smile stretched across his face. My face. I looked closer, and it was definitely that same boy. Terrified, I slammed the book and put it back on the shelf. I didn't sleep that night. I lie in the guest room with the book 3 feet away from me on the shelf and stared at the ceiling, telling myself over and over that the illustrators just drew characters who looked like a lot of people. But I never opened the book again. My grandmother suddenly passed away from a stroke the following month. It was terrible, but at least she went quickly, without much pain. We cleaned her house over 2 long weekends. I was supposed to help sort the guest room. For some reason, I couldn't find the book. Not that I really wanted to. The truth is, I was afraid of what would happen if I found it. Afraid I would open it and not be able to stop myself from turning to the altar page again, from seeing what, if anything, had changed. The book never turned up. It was a little weird, but honestly, I was kind of glad. At least the whole thing was over. I didn't think about the book again for years. I grew up and moved away, leaving the entire memory as just some vague remnant of the past. Then a few weeks ago, I was down a rabbit hole on some forgotten corner of the internet. One of those late night sessions where you link from post to post for hours and end up somewhere you never anticipated. And I found a forum thread that made my hands go cold. It was on an archived message board, the kind that hasn't been active since the early 2000s, and it was titled, "Cursed Kids Books from the 90s, Collecting Evidence." The thread was long, dozens of posts over what looked like several months of discussion. The people posting were mostly writing in the careful way they do, when they're afraid of sounding crazy. They were describing books, activity books, puzzle books, picture books, all purchased at yard sales, thrift stores, and estate sales, all with slightly off titles, close but not quite matching any known publication, all featuring detailed illustrations. They all claimed to have seen themselves in the pages. The theory the thread kept circling back to, from one particularly detailed post by someone claiming to be a former bookseller, was this. Sometime in the late 80s and early 90s, a loose network of occultists had begun to copy popular book series, creating their own versions and placing them at book sales and libraries or garage sales without anyone noticing. They were said to be using something called a harvest sigil, designing the books to be engaging to children, dense with imagery, the kind of thing a kid would return to again and again. With each reading, the child's attention, their focused and innocent absorption, would be slowly drawn into the book. The more they read, the more of themselves they lost into the pages. The thread used a phrase I haven't been able to forget. The thinning of the self. It described how children who read the books reportedly would grow increasingly passive and detached, as if some essential part of them was being shifted elsewhere. Some posts mentioned knowing children from their past who had read these and become quiet and remote, then soon went missing entirely. The illustrations of the readers appeared in the books as kind of a receipt. The more detailed the image became, the more of you had already been taken. I sat at my desk for a long time after I finished the thread. I began to remember the sensation of being drained when I would leave my grandma's house. I didn't have an explanation for it when it was occurring, but I did now. I now know how incredibly lucky I was. As sad as it is that I lost my grandmother, I'd only looked at the book maybe a few times, enough to be noticed, but not enough to be taken. Whatever process the book was designed to complete, it was interrupted by accident, or somehow intentionally by my grandma. If she had lived another few years, I surely wouldn't have made it out. There's one thought I still can't put down. Even now, after all these years, the book was dense with figures, hundreds of characters on every page, each one a tiny detailed person going about their life in that giant crowd. I had always assumed they were invented, the product of some illustrator's imagination, drawn to fill space. But if I was on those pages, if the book could reach out into the world and put my face into its illustrations, then who were all the others? Every smiling face in that crowd. The book was old when my grandmother found it. It had surely been looked at by several others before us. And even now, I bet it's still somewhere out there. In a donation bin somewhere, in a cardboard box in someone's attic. On a folding table at an estate sale, just waiting. Patient, the way old things can be. Everyone inside, still smiling.